Welcome to 24 Billion Stories. This is the fourth segment in my conversation with Emmanuel Katongole. One of the things you might not know about Rwanda is that the nation of Rwanda was 80% Christian at the time of the genocide. The Hutus were Christian, the Tutsis were Christian, and the Christian Hutus were killing the Christian Tutsis. In this segment, Dr. Katongole is going to tell us about a faith community in Rwanda that actually refused to participate in the genocide. Let's listen together. You talk a lot in the book about how Christians, killed Christians. Folks that they'd worshipped with the week before, they were now killing. That pastors and many, I don't know whether it was most cases or not, either actively participated or passively stepped aside to allow the genocide to occur, even in their own church buildings at times. But then you also mentioned the lone Islamic community and how it stood up to the Interahamwe rather than participating or passively stepping aside. What can we as Christians learn from that and from how that Islamic community responded to the genocide? It seems that there was something special about that community that we can learn from.
Yeah, and one of the stories that I discovered early on, actually on my first journey to Rwanda after the genocide, one of the stories that I found that was so striking, and I have continued ready to invite my imagination, is the story of the Islamic community. And the main mosque of that Islamic community, even the location of it is very significant. It's near the cemetery. Actually, the history of it, that was a piece of land that was given by the governor to this small group of people because they didn't want them to flourish, so they were given that place near the morgue and the cemetery. So a kind of a marginalized group, a group that doesn't really matter, even size-wise. And so that's where they started their work of Islamization, and they built their community. And so you can imagine the shock, the contrast. So during Easter week, when Christians are celebrating the risen Lord, they're killing each other in churches. But those who were able to flee and take refuge in the mosque, they were saved. That the Muslims didn't sort of identify primarily as Hutu and Tutsi. They welcomed people as people. That was shocking. And I said, What is it about this community? Is it just because they're Muslims? I said, well, not quite, because even Muslims do kill and the others. So is it because somehow as a minority, they didn't feel as much pressure to self-identify as Hutu and Tutsi, the standard categories that everybody has to identify with in Rwanda? They didn't feel the pressure, the social responsibility of upholding Rwanda ideology, of Rwanda society. Rwanda society didn't depend on them providing that social framework. I thought that, okay, and that kind of released their imagination, that they could imagine people differently. And they could do so because they are insignificant. Rwanda is not going to rise or fall because of this small group of people. Now, that's a problem with the Christianity that is the majority religion, but also with the Christianity that comes from a history of thinking that upholding America, upholding Europe, upholding Africa, depends on us. So we need, in a way, to bear the social responsibility. But part of bearing that social responsibility means actually affirming radiating, providing a framework for America to work, for Rwanda to work, and things like that. That's part of our challenge as Christians. We have come from a history where, where once upon a time, Christianity, that's the leftovers of Christendom, Christianity controlled all the frames of references of politics, of economics, and things like that. Of course, that has shifted into secular politics. But deep down, we still long for that time to rule. And so the way it has morphed into the kind of social ethics of social responsibility, we have to be responsible for upholding, whether it's religious freedom or it's kind of like a bit within us. And that, in a way, good as it is, also deprives us of the imaginative freedom to kind of take recourse and take seriously some of the invitations that we see from the gospel, for example, to come to belong together into a new community, into a new group, because we feel we have to uphold our nations. Take, for example, the case of the immigration. With a number of people seeking immigration, whether from Latin America or from Europe, the Muslim world, and so forth, Christians you would think would be the first ones to say, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I didn't have anything to eat and you gave me water and food. You would think that would be the first ones. But we forget all that and we just go back to the national security, national policy, and things like that. So the gospel, in other words, is not as significant in our day-to-day life because we have already assumed that it's more important to be American. From that point of view, the question that was asked by this cardinal that visited Rwanda in the middle of the genocide is the same question that is asked of everyone else. Is the blood of tribalism deeper than the waters of baptism? Is the blood of nationalism deeper than the waters of baptism? What difference does being a Christian make? I said these are the kind of the question for me arise out of Rwanda. Is Christianity just a kind of a vanish that kind of helps us to do the underlying work of what it means either to be a Hutu, a Tutsi, an American, an African, work that would have gone on anyway with or without us? Or does it bring something radically new, perhaps even interruptive to the kind of social realities that are on the ground? If we attend to the story of Christianity seriously, I feel there is always a kind of disruptive element to that story as well.
Thank you for listening. I hope you're enjoying this conversation as much as I have. The fifth and final segment of the conversation with Emmanuel Katongole drops next week. Until then, keep listening to stories and keep telling yours.